I recently finished Christina Applegate's book, You with the Sad Face. So many interesting and fascinating topics were mentioned. She described significant trauma and stressors that she experienced. One of these examples includes witnessing domestic violence as a child in her household, and then later becoming someone who herself experienced domestic violence as she became older, which was fascinating because her mom, seeing things that Christina Applegate was going through, kind of stepped in and was able to be like a barrier and a shield when Christina Applegate was going through some of these instances of interpersonal violence. Other stressors and trauma that she mentioned was, the loss of her child, feelings of inadequacy and imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is just simply believing that, I'm in this situation, but I don't deserve to be in the situation. I don't have the unique abilities or skills or intellect, whatever those specific things are. So she had imposter syndrome as it relates to her roles in Hollywood. In her book, she also discussed some of her medical conditions, such as being a breast cancer survivor, and she also described multiple sclerosis and the change that this condition exhibited in her life. But she also discussed her happy moments, having those who loved her, specifically her people who she considered family in Hawaii, as she would sit out on the lanai and think about different things and have these discussions with people who were family. She also was extremely happy to discuss her child and her daughter, and being extremely elated as it relates to any description in her book related to her daughter. She also described instances of being very happy and elated when people who she saw as peers or people who she saw as like these icons in the field of acting were also interested in her and wanted to get to know her and said positive things about her. So while there were definitely significant trauma and stressors, there were quite a few happy moments and happiness that she displayed throughout the book. And then something that she constantly described was this concept of, not having the patience or time to sugarcoat things anymore. She sees herself now as needing to be direct because essentially life is short. So we need to be direct with people. There was a quote that she mentioned in the book that I really want to highlight that really stuck with me. It was something along the lines of, life is messy no matter who is living it. That quote to me is extremely powerful. It's far too easy to get caught up in this trap where we think that other people have this whole life situation figured out and that we ourselves are the ones that are struggling and we are the messy ones, whereas everyone else has their stuff together. The more you learn about people's stories, you realize that just as the quote relays, life is messy and everyone has some messiness, whether they have dealt with it and are working through it, or they're still dealing with the messiness, or they themselves have navigated ways to kind of cope with some of the difficulties that they're facing. Because it's so easy to look at someone and say, why can't I be like that person? And again, it's usually not that simple. You only are working with part of that person's story, the part of the story that you can see, but you don't know the behind the scenes story. And even think about how this may apply to social media. You're only seeing these snapshots and portions of someone's life, but you're not seeing the deeply intricate parts of their lives where there may be some messiness, so to speak, or even those that walk among us with this title of star or this title of celebrity. The more of their books that you read, the more you realize, or the more their interviews you listen to or watch, the more you realize that, yes, while this person may be smiling on camera, they may be singing this beautiful note, the more you realize, the more their stories that you hear, that they too are often dealing with their struggles and difficulties and complexities. And we're only seeing a part of their story for the most part. So let's take, for example, Christina Applegate. I'm pretty sure most people who may have been looking at her play some of the various roles that she may have been playing, especially earlier on in her career, they probably had no idea what the type of difficulties that she was experiencing as they were in their house watching some of the videos and clips and entire shows that she was a cast member in. And even the previous video, when I described Matthew Perry, he was someone who was in front of a vast audience as a comedic actor, making folks laugh. And he himself was struggling with copious amounts of difficulties. So ultimately, I just want to be clear here. This quote of life is messy no matter who is living it is something to really consider when you're looking at someone else's shoes and you're thinking that they have it figured out and you don't. Because again, you're only working with a part of their story. You don't know their full story. You don't know fully what's going on with that person. So life is messy no matter what. Understanding that there are all flaws and difficulties and challenges that we face and messiness as we face. And so you aren't inherently flawed for having to navigate through some of these complexities and difficulties. Ultimately, hang in there, and hopefully this will help someone see what you can do to try to bring yourself joy, happiness, positivity, or even find positive ways to kind of cope and navigate through some of the messiness that you may be experiencing. Ultimately, I'm wishing you luck and wishing you the best out there. Thank you so much for watching this.